What is up, guys? Welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great Saturday night. I did want to bring you guys some weekend podcasts, some weekend content. Before we do kind of jump into the podcast, we'll be talking a lot of Eastern Conference, reacting to an NBA.com article, ranking the teams. It's a power ranking list we'll be reading today. I want to thank people that watch on YouTube. Had a record month in the offseason in July. Haven't had numbers like that since, I think, last year around this time. So you guys crushed it this offseason. Appreciate everyone watching on YouTube. Giving us thumbs up, comments, shares, all that great stuff. People that listen on the audio side, you guys broke a record as well. Over 5,000 podcast downloads last month. We've never done that. We didn't do that all this season during the playoffs. 5,000, that's a new record. The audio listeners, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, over 5,000 is a big accomplishment, one. And two, it's the off season. There were no games. That's amazing to me that you guys helped us reach over 5,000 podcast downloads. Appreciate you guys. Wherever you listen to us, wherever you support us, just know we love the support. We love interacting with you. And you guys make this so much fun. As a genuine Piston fan, just like yourself, turned a hobby into a full-time job because of you guys. I wouldn't be anywhere without you. But in today's episode, what we'll be discussing is an NBA.com Eastern Conference offseason power ranking. We're going to kind of be going over this power ranking and where the Detroit Pistons were ranked in this one. I was kind of surprised when I read this article this week. I'm sure you guys, if you've seen the power ranking, I know there was a lot of discussion with where the Pistons were ranked. Some of you thought that it should be a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. And that's what listeners are for. We're going to debate. We're going to have discussions. So let's get into this list by NBA.com. I am going to be making myself, if you're watching live on YouTube right now, a little bit smaller. So don't freak out if you just see my face kind of get smaller. But here we go. And I'll complete that out of the frame. I am really bad at technical directing. It's a big reason why I never offered to do it when I was at Woodward Sports. I just never wanted to do it because I was so bad at it. But here's the list I was referring to. It says offseason power ranking, Cavs, Knicks leading the way in the East. This was written by a reporter of John Schumann. John, if I butchered your last name, I apologize. I am terrible with last names. But we're going to be reading John's article. He kind of goes over why he believes that the Eastern Conference is going to have another losing record against the West. And I guess 23 out of the 26 seasons, the Western Conference has had a better record. I think most of us know that the West is just ridiculous. Like some of the teams, like when you look from like top to bottom, like 40, 50 win teams are like fighting for like 8 seeds or playing tournaments. Like the West is just so stacked that I kind of feel bad for Western Conference teams that, you know, don't have like a quote unquote contender. But it kind of goes over that, kind of goes over how, you know, the East this year without Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, and Damian Lillard is, you know, going to be weaker. Obviously, this article was written a couple of I want to say last week because Dame has been traded since then, or not traded, but he got waived and then he signed with Portland. Yeah, when was this actually written? Had to be a couple. July 30th. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. Maybe he didn't edit his article. Anyways, I'm rambling. I do apologize. But we're going to kind of be going into his power ranking. So let's start with number 1. He's got the Cavs. Apparently, they are up 4 spots since last week. So last season, they had a 64-18 record. They were the number 1 seeded team in the East under Kenny Atkinson. They had the number 1 offensive rating, and they had the number 8 defensive rating, and they had a pretty good net rating as well. If you guys don't really know what that is, I'm not going to get into it too much. Key additions this offseason for them, Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance Jr. I'm kind of interested to see what does happen with Lonzo Ball, especially after he was out for, it seems like 3 years, but I know it wasn't that long. He was out with the injury. He did come back this season. Looked pretty good, but you could tell there was some rust on there. I think Larry Nance is a decent rotation piece for them. They're not going to ask him to start games, but he probably does come off the bench for them. Now, guys they lost. Ty Jerome, that was their backup guard. They lost him. Lost Isaac Okoro as well. Really good defender for them. So it'll be interesting to see how that does work. If you guys do know about Isaac Okoro and the type of defender he is. So he goes on to say about the Cavs that their offense scored 7.3 points per 100 possessions than the league average, the 10th best differential for any team in 29 seasons, for which we have the play-by-play data. He's kind of just going over, how potent the Cleveland Cavaliers offense was this past season. And when you win 64 games, you're probably going to be the number one seed in the East. I don't really have any issues with him having the Cavs number one personally, you guys. I don't. I think you could make an argument that the Knicks could definitely be up here as well with the type of season they had. But one of the key questions that he does have, it looks like, is can they push the defense into the top 5? I personally don't think they can. That's just my opinion as a Piston fan. I think Evan Mobley is a hell of a talent. But, I mean, when you have guards like a Donovan Mitchell and a Darius Garland, I don't really know if this is a top 5 defense. I think they can kind of tread in the top 10. I don't think it's a top 5 defensive team. That's just my opinion. You guys may think that the Cavs could possibly be a top 5 defensive team. I just don't see it. But he does have them number 1 in his Eastern Conference power rankings. Number 2, New York Knicks. So they were 2 last week. They had a record last season of 51-31. Their offensive rating was 5th best at 117.3, and their defensive rating was 13th for them. So key additions, Jordan Clarkson, which I think is actually pretty big, and they're getting Gershon Yabusele from the Philadelphia 76ers, which I like that for them. As just a basketball fan, taking my Piston hat off for a second, trying to not be completely biased for this whole podcast today. But I do like the additions. Key departure is none. I feel like you could put Tom Thibodeau as a key departure. You kind of fired your coach. Key outstanding free agents. Precious Achiuwa, he's still UFA. Campaign, still a UFA as well. And they're bringing in Mike Brown. Now, here's my thing as a Piston fan, you guys. I honestly think that the Knicks will probably be kind of the same. I feel like Mike Brown and Tom Thibodeau, that's not that big of a difference. Speaking like just philosophy-wise, Mike Brown is a defensive coach. I think the Knicks will be a top 2, top 3 team in the East this year. I really do. Watching them in the playoffs against the Detroit Pistons, I thought it was a really good battle test for the Pistons to see where they actually need to get, and you got to play one of the better Eastern Conference teams. But he does have them as number 2. One of the key questions he does have for the Knicks is, will the ball move more? That's something. When you watch the Knicks, it's a lot of ISOs. The way they use Cat is weird. I thought that they would use him a little bit more in the post more, or do more pick and pops, but we even saw it in like kind of the Pistons Knicks series. Like Cat really didn't pick and pop as much as he probably could have with Jalen Brunson. I know Mikal Bridges has got an extension, and a majority of their team is coming back. I mean, Precious Achiuwa, who didn't really play that much in campaign, which they do have Tyler Kolek. I don't really know if he's ready for backup minutes, but I still feel the Knicks are going to be a pretty good team in the East this year. Don't really know about you guys, but we're going to go on to number 3, and I think this is where the list gets pretty controversial. Okay. I'm going to take a quick water break, and then we'll get into the Orlando Magic being number 3. Okay. So, number 3 is the Magic. They went up 7 spots from last week. Last year, made a 41-41 record. And you kind of have to address why they were 41-41. They were so injured it wasn't funny. Whether it was Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, I believe they both had oblique tears. So, their season was just such an up and down roller coaster. Their lead point guard, Jalen Suggs, he had a tailbone injury. I mean, they were just so injured. Like it kind of blows my mind that they were still able to stay competitive in the East and challenge the Celtics pretty damn well, if you do ask me. In offensive rating, they were one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA, you guys. And the 27th ranked offensive rating. I think that's a big reason why they decided to trade for Desmond Bane. Defensive rating, they were number 2 in the entire NBA last year. So they have an elite defense. They just can't score the basketball to save their lives. And I think the reason why they traded so many picks for Desmond Bane is they're hoping that he can kind of, be maybe a second option, third option for them. They have some intriguing players on the roster. So key additions, obviously, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, good backup point guard. Key departures, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, and Gary Harris. I thought Gary Harris was going to be an Orlando Magic player for life, but obviously they had to move on there. I think you can debate whether or not Orlando's going to be, top 3 in the East. I see a lot of people kind of crown them as the 3rd best team in the East right now, and I think a key factor for that is Desmond Bane, one, but I also think that people forget when the Magic were relatively healthy this season before they had all the injuries. They were, I think, the 3rd or the 4th seed very, very early on in the season, but then Paolo got injured, and then they kind of, went from like being a top 3, top 4 team in the East to not even kind of being in the playoff picture because of the injuries. And I think that's why so many people, including people at NBA.com, have them as high as 3 on this list. To me, I have to see how Desmond Bane kind of flows with the Paolo Banchero, flows with the Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and all those guys down there. I think they will be, at least bare minimum, top 4 team in the Eastern Conference this year. Defensively, I think you know what you're getting. Offensively, I think is where a lot of people have their questions because there will be nights where they just can't score the basketball. They can't hit a 3 to save their lives. I think they're really hoping Desmond Bane can really help them maybe be like around 15 to 20 in terms of offensive rating. But they have the Magic number 3. Key questions: can Franz Wagner fix a shot? I'm not sure about that. If he can, that would be really dangerous for the Magic. If he can actually hit a 3-point shot, it would be really dangerous. But even if he doesn't ever develop a league average 3-point shot, he's still a pretty good basketball player, in my opinion. I think there's debate who's better right now between Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. But it's off season, so the timeline is like really weird right now. And I don't even know how it's popping up on my timeline because I'm a Pistons fan, but I see a lot of Magic fans actually talking about this right now, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. Guy that you drafted 1st overall, you don't think he's better than a guy that you drafted in the lottery. That's interesting. But let's go to number 4. Number 4, the Detroit Pistons. So Pistons actually moved up 5 spots from last week. This year they were 44 and 38. They had the 14th best offensive rating, and they had the 10th best defensive rating. Now, this warms my heart. We kind of had a league average offense. We had a top 10 defense, you guys. I honestly think if we had just a full year of Asar Thompson healthy right off the gate, I think this could be a top 7, top 8 defense. I really do. Key additions this year for us: Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson. Key departures: Dennis Schroeder, Tim Hardaway Jr. Key outstanding free agents: Malik Beasley. And one of the things that they want to know about the Pistons, a key question: can they reduce the turnovers in fouls? That is a very good question. Can the Pistons take care of the basketball? God, I hope so. I really hope so, you guys. I feel like this season, there were so many games. If you guys listen to these post-game podcasts that we do during the season, I felt like we'd be looking at these box scores and it's 15, 20 turnovers. We're like, oh, that's why we lost tonight. Or if we did win a game, it'd be like 27, 28 turnovers and we win maybe by like 2 to 5 points. So like, man, if we can take care of the basketball, we wouldn't have to be in these pressure situations in the fourth quarter. I really hope we can take care of the basketball. I hope Cade can take better care of the basketball, which I think he will. I think all these guys right now are working on their game. I'm sure Cade's working on handles, jump shots, all that good stuff. In the fouling, that's another thing, man. I mean, how many games did we come up here and talk about the early fouls with the bigs, the early fouls with the SAR or with Cade? Like, if they can, manage their turnovers, not saying like you're going to go from like almost leading the league in turnovers to like being the best, but if you can manage them, like I could live with, 10 to 12 a night. Like I could live with that. Once you kind of get in the 20s, it's like, that's pretty hard to win a basketball game. And the fouling, that's something that I'm sure JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons assistant coaches will be working with them exclusively during camp, during preseason. The fouling, man, that's a thing where I was concerned last year because they were getting into a lot of foul trouble, especially guys like Duren that would get 2 fouls in like 5 minutes of playing time. Hopefully JD can not react as quickly and be more disciplined in terms of defending and not getting into foul trouble. But I love seeing the Detroit Pistons are number 4 on this Eastern Conference offseason power ranking list. So let's go to number 5. Number 5, the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, so they're up 8 spots from last week. They had a record of 40-42. They had an offensive rating of 113.7. That was 17th best this year in the NBA. And they had a defensive rating of 114.8, 18th best in the NBA. And I feel a big reason why they had at least an average defense wasn't because of Trae Young, was because of Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels, to me, is that team's whole defense. I think they got better. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is really going to help them. They had a pretty good offseason, and we'll look at it right now. The key additions: Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, Kristaps Porzingis. I think this is going to be a much improved team, but the thing with Atlanta reminds me of a cousin at a family reunion or a cookout that if they just got their shit together, the rest of the family would talk about them positively, but they just never get their shit together. Key departures: Clint Capella, Karis LeVert, Trey Mann, Larry Nance Jr., and George Niang. But they have them ranked at number 5. I guess a key question that you want to know: how can they be defensively? Yeah, I'm interested with that too. I'm interested to see, is KP, Kristaps Porzingis, actually 100% healthy? I don't know what the hell was going on during the playoffs, but the guy couldn't even breathe. And the Celtics were trying to play him. I think Luke Kennard is a good bench piece for 3-point shooting. Hopefully, Nickeil Alexander-Walker can help them out defensively, but I think this is kind of going to be a middle-of-the-pack defensive team. But they do have Trae Young to kind of retool a little bit, trading for KP, Kristaps Porzingis. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, get Jalen Johnson back next year. This should be a very interesting team. I think they can kind of float in between the top 6 team if everything goes correctly with them. But I could definitely see this being like an 8 seed. I definitely could. It's just the Hawks, to me, they have to prove it to me. And they just really haven't been a solid basketball team since that Eastern Conference run from a few seasons ago. They've just kind of, been in that play-in tournament situation, it seems like, every year. Number 6, Milwaukee Bucks. So last year, 48-34. They had the 10th best offensive rating and the 12th best defensive rating. Key additions, Miles Turner, man, that one is going to be hard to get used to. Obviously, Miles Turner is still going to be in the Detroit Pistons division, but Miles Turner in a Bucks uniform is going to take some getting used to after seeing him in a Pacers uniform for so many years. Cole Anthony, public enemy number 1, if I'm being honest. If you're a Piston fan, if you know, you know. And Gary Harris. Gary Harris is going to be in the Central Division. So Gary Harris is a little closer to home. He'll be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Key departures, Damian Lillard. Man, the buyout of Damian Lillard's contract to me is still puzzling. Brook Lopez, he's going out west. And Pat Connaughton, who's a pretty solid rotational piece. I don't know if you guys remember. I'm rambling like crazy right now, but Pat Connaughton just went ape shit in the last game of the season. I don't know if you guys remember. He had I believe 40 points. But it was just like a bunch of G League guys out there. But they got the Bucks number 6, which I think is kind of generous given the departure of Damian Lillard. But the key question, how much was Lillard limiting them defensively? I think replacing Brook Lopez with Miles Turner, I think Giannis will be able to, play with him in a similar way. I feel like Miles is a little bit more mobile than Brook Lopez is at this stage of his career. So that'll be interesting to see. I think the biggest issue and the key questions, he's talking about Damian Lillard limiting him defensively. My question is, how confident are they in that point guard room? Because that point guard room is pretty thin. Cole Anthony isn't like a starting quality point guard. He's more of a backup or a reserve. They don't really have a legitimate starting point guard where you kind of feel comfortable. But I guess when you have Giannis and he's a point forward and he initiates 99.9% of your offense, you're probably not too worried there. But I do see the Bucks kind of taking a step back. I still think they'll be a top 6 team in the East personally. But losing Dame and kind of having to retool, losing Brook and Pat Connaughton, it'll be interesting to see how the Bucks do, especially since Doc Rivers is still coaching them. That should be another key question. Does Doc Rivers get fired this year? Man, I don't know how that guy keeps getting jobs. I really don't, you guys. I really don't. So let's go to number 7. Number 7, which I feel is very generous, Philadelphia 76ers. So they're up 13 spots from last week. They have a record of 24-58. Going back to the process Sixers. They had an offensive rating, 23 last year. Defensive rating, 26 last year. They were just one of the worst teams in basketball last year. And they had guys like a Paul George, like a Joel Embiid, that just didn't play basketball games. So, key additions. VJ Edgecombe, number 3 overall pick. I think VJ Edgecombe was the right pick for the Sixers. He's going to be a really good player. Trenton Watford, kind of an under-the-radar signing by them. Played for the Brooklyn Nets last year. I don't really know if too many of you guys actually know who that is, but that's okay. Key departures, Gershon Yabusele. They just didn't even remotely offer him, I guess, anything significant. That's why he left. And they still have a RFA situation with one-time Piston Quentin Grimes. Be interested to see, what kind of number he does get there. But they got the 76ers, number 7. Interested to see what the key question is here. What does George have left? Oh man, that's funny. What does Embiid have left? Well, while we picking on Podcast P over here, I think the 76ers whole season is health dependent. And I mean, I think they brought back Kyle Lowry. He's got to be in his 40s by now, man. Like, 76ers are such a weird team. Like, I guess if they do make the playoffs, maybe they're a fun first round matchup. But, like, are there any teams in the East at the top, like the Knicks or the Cavs, or like, are even the Magic or the Pistons? Like, are they really that worried about the 76ers? Because there's no way Joel Embiid is playing 70-plus games. If they get like 50 or 40 games out of him, they'd probably be happy. Paul George, I think he already got hurt. I read that he's going to be reevaluated in 8 to 12 weeks. He hurt himself working out. Like, it's bad if you're a 76ers fan, man. Like, I would probably just be asking for a rebuild at this point. Like, you got VJ Edgecombe. Tyrese Maxey's a fun player. Like, just build around Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe as your backcourt of the future. See what you can get for Embiid or something. Number 7, I think, is extremely generous by NBA.com. Let's go to number 8. The Miami Heat. So, they're up 10 spots since last week. They had a record of 37-45. They had the 21st offensive rating, had the number 9 defensive rating. So top 10 defense, kind of bottom of the league in terms of offensive rating. Key additions, Norman Powell. Key departures, Duncan Robinson and Kyle Anderson. I do like the Norman Powell move for them. They got involved in that John Collins trade. I think Norman Powell will be a really big addition for them. Obviously, they did trade Duncan Robinson to the Detroit Pistons. It's funny they put key additions and Simone Fontecchio's name is nowhere to be found. The disrespect. That's kind of funny. Disrespect on tech. I'm just having too much fun on this podcast today. Obviously, they lost Kyle Anderson. What is the key question? Can they get more inside? I mean, you got Khalil Ware, you got Bam, so you're probably still doing that 2 big lineup, which I think it works with a Khalil Ware and a Bam Adebayo. I think Norman Powell will help you, get buckets. But with the Heat, I think they're one of those just teams in the East that you can never truly count out. Losing Jimmy Butler, and they kind of retooled with Andrew Wiggins and all those guys down there. I think the Heat will at least be a entertaining, top 8 team in the East. I think it's health dependent, but I'm kind of waiting for them just to pull the Band-Aid and try to maybe rebuild. I don't think Pat Riley ever will, as long as he's in charge down there, but they got the Heat number 8. Number 9, Indiana Pacers. Didn't really surprise me whatsoever. Obviously, losing Tyrese Halliburton. They're down 1 spot from last week. Last year, they had a 50-32 record. Had the 9th best offense. Had the 14th best defense. Key additions, Jay Huff, Grand Rapids Gold legend. So after lowballing Miles Turner, they decide they're going to sign a former G League center. He got called up, got signed with the Grizzlies. So Jay Huff is going to be the Pacers' starting center probably. Miles Turner, key departure, really big key departure. And a key outstanding free agent, Thomas Bryant. Pretty sure I saw that he got a deal overseas. Don't know if he's going to take it or not. But biggest question for them, how well can the system run without Halliburton? I think that's what everyone's thinking. Like, I still feel Indiana is going to be somewhat competitive in the East. I don't think they're going to be the 15th seeded team in the Eastern Conference. I don't, especially with guys still on that roster. Like, you still have Pascal Siakam. You still have TJ McConnell, Andrew Nebhard, who I think is going to get a lot of usage without Halliburton out there. I still see the Pacers being a top 8 team in the East. If I did have to just fire off something right off the top of my head right now, but maybe they can get hot, catch lightning in a bottle again. I feel like they're one of those teams that kind of just coast during the regular season, and then when it gets like around April, they can just kind of turn on the Jets and just shock everybody. But hopefully they can stay healthy this year. I think that was the biggest reason why they were the 4 seed, because they just weren't healthy. Like in December, they weren't even in the playoff picture. They were like out of the play-in tournament. They didn't really get healthy until after Christmas, and they kind of just were just winning like crazy. Let's go to number 10. Number 10, the Toronto Raptors. So they're up 11 spots from last week. Key additions: Colin Murray Boyles, number 9 pick of this year's draft. Key departures: none. Key outstanding free agents: Chris Boucher. So the Raptors are a very interesting team. And the reason why I say they're interesting, because I don't know what the hell they're doing. They have some guys on the roster that I like. Scotty Barnes, obviously, still there. RJ Barrett, Manuel Quickley. I think Colin Murray Boyles will be a fun player for them. They decided to trade for Brandon Ingram, and I felt like that was their splash this year. They've lost so many players in free agency. I think they're like, you know what, we're going to trade for Brandon Ingram and extend him, and that'll just be our free agency. I don't really know what to make of the Raptors. They could either be really good or really bad. It's just a team where, like, there's a lot of collective talent. I'm just not really sure how they're all going to gel well together, because there's one basketball and you have a lot of guys on this roster that need a lot of touches, and it's a lot of isolation. But it'll be interesting to see kind of where the Raptors may be. Could they be a play-in team? Could they be a sneaky team in the East? Maybe. I'm not really sure. Key question: does Brandon Ingram fit? Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't really know how you have an RJ Barrett, a Brandon Ingram, and a Scotty Barnes, and Manuel Quickley. Like, there's so many guys on this roster that are very talented, but I just don't really know if they're all going to gel together. But they got the Raptors number 10. Maybe they can make the playoffs. Maybe they can be a surprise team, be better than they were last year. Number 11, Chicago Bulls. They're down 9 spots from last week. They had a record of 39-43. They had the 20th best offensive rating last year, and they have the 19th best defensive rating. Now, key additions: Isaac Okoro, which I think right away their defense is going to get better. Key additions: their draft pick number 12. I'm probably going to butcher this one. Looks like Noah Asugene was their number 12 overall pick. Key departures: Lonzo Ball. Key outstanding free agents still Josh Giddey. Man, these RFAs are just getting screwed over. I mean, Josh Giddey, Quentin Grimes, Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, the list goes on. I kind of feel bad for these RFAs, you guys. I really do. The Bulls are always one of those teams where it's like, maybe they make the play-in, maybe they make some noise, but I'm not really too like worried about them in the East. I know they kind of got better after All-Star break, and Josh Giddey was a big reason for that. Key questions: how good could Matas Buzelis be? Yeah, it's year 2 of Matas Buzelis. I mean, can he take a step? Can he be a bigger integral piece with the Bulls? I'm not really sure. And they extended Billy Donovan. Like, I really don't know what the Chicago Bulls are doing. I don't think the Bulls know what they're doing. But let's go on to number 12. The Boston Celtics, they're down 3 spots from last week. They're coming in at number 12. They had a 61-21 record last season. Had the second best offensive rating and the fourth best defensive rating. Key additions: Anthony Simons and Georges Niang. Key departures: Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Luke Kornet. And key outstanding free agent Al Horford. So let's kind of get into the Celtics. So Jason Tatum tore his Achilles. I think everyone knows that. I feel that there's going to be a lot of people under the same opinion as me. The Celtics will be significantly worse this season because they lost their star player in Jason Tatum. They still have Jaylen Brown. They still have Derek White. Anthony Simons, if they decide to keep him, because there's been reports that they're trying to flip him, which maybe, the Celtics just kind of have a retool year. Maybe they can get a high draft pick. I don't know. Watch them get the first overall pick. Kind of be like a Dallas Mavericks type shit, Like, you kind of trade your best player, or your one player gets hurt, and then you get rewarded with the first overall pick. Like, that's the last thing Boston needs is another top pick. I could so see that happening though. If it does, I won't be surprised. George Niang, good, just role player. Can step up if you need him to. Losing Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, that new CBA is just making teams make trades that they probably didn't want to make in the first place. So Drew Holiday is in Portland, Kristaps is in Atlanta, Luke Kornet is in San Antonio. I think the Luke Kornet loss is actually pretty huge. He played really big minutes for them as a backup reserve center. Now he's going to be backing up Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio. And then Al Horford, I don't really know if he's going to sign with the Warriors. Everything's pointing for him to sign with Golden State, but there's also talk of him possibly retiring. He is getting up there in age. I think he's 39 or 40 or 38. Who knows? I don't have his age pulled up in front of me, but I know he's kind of getting up there in age. I think the key question, what do they have inside? I really don't know. I mean, you kind of look at their front court depth. It's pretty bleak. It'll be interesting to see without Jason Tatum, how much can Jaylen Brown step up? I think that would be my key question. How much can Jaylen Brown step up in Jason Tatum's absence? I'm not entirely sure. Could I see the Celtics being a play-in team? Yes. Could I see them missing the playoffs? Yes. It kind of depends, like, how they gel well. Can Derek White take more offensive abilities, offensive responsibilities? I didn't even say responsibilities. I said abilities. I'm just getting tired of this podcast. I apologize, guys. Can Derek White step up? Can Jaylen Brown step up? Do they keep Anthony Simons? Could he be a nice number 2 option for them? So it'll be interesting to kind of see what the Celtics do. And I think it's all dependent if they keep Anthony Simons or not. If they don't, then I could see them possibly missing the playoffs just because that's a lot to ask out of Jaylen Brown and Derek White. And they got a lot weaker on the inside, especially at the center position. And I could see a lot of teams just attacking their centers because, you don't have that 7-foot shot blocker like a Luke Kornet. So they could definitely take a step back this year. But wouldn't surprise me if they, kind of flirting with that play in to like 8th seed. Number 13, the Charlotte Hornets. So Charlotte last year, 19-63. Had one of the worst offenses last year. They were the 29th ranked offense, and they had the 24th ranked defense. Key additions: Kyle Knippel, number 4 overall pick, Colin Sexton, Pat Connaughton, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Mason Plumlee. So, the Hornets actually had a pretty solid offseason. If you do ask me, you're getting some vets in Colin Sexton, Mason Plumlee, and the one-time Pistons, Spencer Dinwiddie, Pat Connaughton, who I think is be a really fun player off the bench for them. Key departures, Mark Williams and Yusuf Nurkic. So I think the Hornets will be better than 19 wins. I think it all really depends on health. And the key question is, how good can the backcourt of Ball and Brandon Miller be? I'm really intrigued with the Hornets. I told you guys that Charlotte and Washington were my 2 teams that I could see, pushing for playoff seeding, like pushing for, play-in tournament seeding if they're healthy. I think it's all health dependent. I'd probably have Washington right here at 13. That's just me though, but they come in at 13 by NBA.com. Number 14, Washington Wizards, team we were just talking about. So they have an 18-64 record last year. They have the worst offense in the NBA, 30th, and they have one of the worst defenses, 28th. Key additions: CJ McCollum, which I think will really help the offense this year, and ball handling. That way you don't have to have young guys handle the rock. Trey Johnson, the number 6 pick, who I think is going to be a really good player. Cam Whitmore, who they got for dirt cheap, by the way. Interested to see like how much Cam Whitmore can provide given more opportunity. I felt like in Houston, he got some opportunity, but you can kind of read like some articles that Udoka and Whitmore kind of butted heads at times, but I'm really curious just to see like what he can do with just more opportunity. Key departures: Jordan Poole, which I honestly think it's a a good move to lose Kuzma and Jordan Poole. I think it'll benefit Alex Sarr more because you're going to have a little bit more grown-ups in there that can, help Alex Sarr mature. I honestly think Washington could be a sneaky team. I think they could be like the Pistons of last year because they have vets on that team. They still have Chris Middleton. You're adding CJ McCollum. I think this could be a fun team. Just a fun team with, low expectations. So key questions. Will one of the young players make a leap? Yeah, I think Alex Sarr is going to take a leap, personally. I think we saw the shot making, the rim protection. I'm just really high on him as a prospect. I think he's going to take that next leap. I mean, Coulibaly could take a leap as well. I mean, Bub Carrington, who I personally like, I think he could take a leap as well. There's just a lot to like with the Washington Wizards this year. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a little bit higher on them the most, but wouldn't surprise me to see them kind of fighting for a play-in tournament seeding. 15th, the Brooklyn Nets. No surprise, they're rebuilding. They were 26 and 56 last year. They had a 28th offensive rating, and they had the 23rd best defensive rating in the NBA, so they were kind of bottom of the barrel as well. Key additions, Michael Porter Jr., Terrence Mann, Igor Demon, their number 8 pick, key departures, Cam Johnson, D'Lo, and Trendon Water. And they still have the RFA stuff with Cam Thomas, which is weird. I know Cam Thomas wants to get paid, but he's probably not going to. Brooklyn, I could definitely see being one of the worst teams in basketball. A lot of people thought that they were going to trade their picks, but they selected every first-round pick this year. I think they had like 4 or 5 first in the first round, and they kept them all. They drafted guys like Danny Wolf, and I don't know. I really thought they could have packaged a couple of firsts to get something significant. I think Michael Porter Jr. is going to be if you play fantasy basketball, he's just going to be a fantasy god. He's probably going to get 30 shots a night. Like Brooklyn's going to be really bad this year, you guys. But honestly, I'm not really too surprised that NBA.com had them as the worst team in their power ranking in the Eastern Conference. But I mean, this list was actually kind of fun. I don't think I've done a 40-minute podcast with you guys in quite some time. But let me know what you guys think of this NBA.com power ranking by them. Pistons were number 4 in this. Let me know what you guys think of the Detroit Pistons being number 4 in this power ranking. Do you agree with them being number 4? What do you think of the Orlando Magic being top 3 already, kind of being crowned as the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference? If there was a team in the East that you think should be higher in this, definitely comment down below in the comment section. Like always, hope you guys are staying safe. Take care. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Bring you guys another short little podcast. But until next time, go Pistons. Peace.